The digital shift. The world keeps spinning fast, and with it, the way we work. This digital age is no longer a futuristic vision. It is the reality we're living in. But what exactly does digital transformation mean? Is it all about flashy apps and robotics replacing human jobs? Not quite. It's about harnessing the power of technology to streamline processes using the power of data and ultimately make smarter decisions. So let's deep dive into this global revolution with some fascinating guests. We'll explore the challenges and opportunities it presents, uncover the latest trends, and equip you with the knowledge to navigate this exciting new landscape. Whether you are a seasoned professional or just starting your career, understanding digital transformation is crucial for success. So, buckle up, put on your thinking caps, and get ready to shift gears with the digital shift. Fly and watch.
Hi, my name is Farrukh Najam, and I am currently working as a process mining COE lead at Meta. I'm based currently in Austin, Texas. I started off my career with A.F. Ferguson in Karachi, and I completed my articles in 2012. After completing my chartered accountancy, I embarked on a journey to work in the Middle East. That was my first stint outside of my home country. After spending a few years in Dubai, I decided to do something different, and I wanted to find new opportunities and challenge myself more. So I decided to go for a master's degree in data science in Texas when I got into University of Texas data science and data analytics program, focusing on businesses. After a difficult 2 years of initial struggle, I found my place, and I was able to say that I was comfortable doing the data wrangling and the data manipulation and the data massaging part, which I had no idea about until a few years ago.
Thank you very much, Farrukh, for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. So since you've already mentioned in your journey, you started off with chartered accountancy, which is in itself a challenging profession. What made you think to deviate, or you could say change your career path from a chartered accountant who leads the finance function as a CFO or a finance head to going to something that would be more into engraving yourselves into the analysis of information or data that is coming into the organization?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question that I often get asked within the fraternity and outside of that as well. And I'll tell you a little story. I was working in the Middle East, and as you start working in the industry, a lot of time, especially when you're working on the FP&A side, that you spend on is the data analysis and the business analytics part. And I increasingly noticed that something that I used to do was extremely inefficient. I mean, the primary reliance as a chartered accountant, as an accountant, was for the analytics purposes was on Excel, which at some point really started to bother me. And I started exploring other options and tools out there. I realized there are some new tools coming along at that point, such as Tableau, and I got a hang of the power of SQL, and I was pleasantly surprised that a lot of things that we were doing in Excel, I could have done in a much shorter amount of time and with a lot of ease while using technology. I continued my exploration, and I was pretty curious at that stage of life, and I realized that there are actually programs which completely excel in this particular field, and there's a huge field around it. The more I read about it, the more inquisitive I became, and that's when I decided that I wanted to do something different and use my current experience and exposure and leverage that to add another layer of technology. Well, growing up, I was always told one thing, that there's strength in diversity, and that really stuck with me. And I took it too literal in a professional career way, and I decided to bring diversity to what I already had. And I think that has been one of my most powerful suits going forward.
But one thing that I'd like to ask, you wanted to do a master's in data science. Our qualification as a chartered accountant, it's again a certification. And this is what I hear from many of my friends where we realize that it's not considered a degree. And then when you want to pursue a master's, you need certain credit hours. What helped you? This is not, this is off the topic actually, but I would like to know more about it. What helped you? And do you think that if you had any continuing professional development CPD credit hours that were recognized in the USA when you were where you wanted to actually continue your studies, would that have helped? Anything that actually helped you? If you'd like to mention that.
Yeah. There are a few things that you can do in order to scale up quickly and get into school abroad. And things may have progressed a lot. It's almost been close to 8-9 years when I went to school for masters, and things were changing back then as well, which is why they accepted my certifications and my qualifications. So the first thing is obviously you get yourself evaluated through an international organization like WES, where they convert your academics into credit hours and see how well they equate with the international standards. That is the first and foremost thing you need to do. CPDs, at least at that point, they did not consider for the sake of uh, admissions. Maybe they do now, or maybe you can convince them to. I honestly, I don't think I tried on that, but that's a good point. Maybe that's something to be explored. Uh, but yeah, most for the most part, you need some sort of credit hour in order to do that. I think what really helped me is that I had tried a dual qualification with ACCA and CA, and together uh, for both the certifications, I had enough credits to get me into a master's program.
Coming back to our topic, what exactly is process mining, and how does it differ from traditional data analysis?
Yeah, so process mining is a relatively new concept. I wouldn't say a new concept, sorry. It's actually a technology which has existed for almost, uh, I think, over 2 decades now. But we see the practical applications and the commercial aspects of the technology coming out in the more recent years. It is a process mining is basically an academic research project. It started off mostly in Europe and has become a very pervasive concept now in a lot of countries and a lot of organizations that are trying to move towards efficiency. Process mining overall, if I can explain in a very simple terms, is basically looking at the process that a company follows, an organization follows, or a team follows for any level of activity. We usually have the standard operating procedures, SOPs, or a workflow, or you may want to call it a desktop procedure where you have your a flow chart which shows the end-to-end process starting from A to B. If it's a bank, then probably you're talking about customer onboarding or any kind of anomaly detection procedures, or for risk compliance. If you're a manufacturing concern, you might want to see what your process looks like from raw material to the finished product. You can have sub processes as well. Within finance, for example, you have closing procedures. You might have an invoicing procedure. So any procedure that you have in desktop is idealistic, is a happy procedure or a happy path, which is a common term we use in process mining. What it means is this is the ideal process that you want a process to work. This is the most ideal or happiest flow of work that you predict or that you want the process to be like. However, in real life, in real terms, this is not exactly how a process works. A process works pretty differently from how you would have liked it to work. And the way I would like to explain that is imagine you have 4 steps in a process A, B, C, and D, and you want them to function in the same order A, B, C, and D. But when you start looking and talking to people, you realize that there are times when actually the process flow is A to C to B and to D. for whatever reasons. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It could be right. And in some situations, it could be ADCB or ADBC. Whatever, all the number of permutations that you can think of are possible. Why do they happen? Various reasons, because maybe practically our team does not have all the answers initially and they want to send it forward first, or because there's a lack of communication between the different teams. There could be 100 reasons for that, but practically speaking, the process does not flow the exact path that you have written down in a process chart. Also, what process mining does is process mining basically creates what we call an MRI and of the process. It goes inside the process. It actually looks at all the instances of how the process has worked and compares it to what it looked like in the desktop procedure. So if, for example, you have 1,000 transactions over a week and you want to see how did the process flow on those 1,000 transactions, you can actually go inside the process mining tool and look at the exact uh, flow of the process. How much time did it take to complete the process from A to D? This is called the data-driven process insight, which you do not see in uh, the original process map, or you do not see in the traditional data analysis methods. Traditional data analysis often focus on the static data to derive insights. Process mining is more dynamic. It is process oriented. The objective is to visualize, monitor, and also improve the processes by providing a clear definition and a clear picture uh, of how the process in real life unfolds. It is able to identify bottlenecks. For example, if we are having trouble, let's say, onboarding a customer and there's a bottleneck, they're missing certain, let's say, a physical address, that's your bottleneck. And let's say we want to know how often does that bottleneck happen. You can look at all the 1,000 transactions and you can say, okay, so we see that 30% of the time, the cause of the bottleneck, so the cause that holds the process from moving forward, is the absence of information on the customer form or the customer details. So you're able to actually pinpoint at the exact bottleneck, which is holding your process, which is making it slow down, and eventually fix it, bring in efficiencies based on true data by understanding it. In process mining, I have seen a lot of instances where you're able to uncover inefficiencies, where you're able to identify the problems or the challenges of a process that you could have never thought of. Because now, individually, you could be asking two, three, four people of how they do, how they work, and what challenges do they have. But when you look at a quantum of a data and you are analyzing each and every step, you're able to see where exactly on an average, or you can use a median, whatever statistical analytical measures you want to use, you can use one of those and identify where within the process exactly is the challenge happening, where the loopholes are, where the bottlenecks are, and what part of the process you can make more efficient in order to make the entire process more efficient and quicker.
Thank you, Farrukh. That was quite a detailed response to my question. Any instances that you'd like to share from your previous experiences, or any known ways that companies have, taken advantage of using process mining as a practice or as a tool?
Yeah, there are quite a few instances where process mining has brought about uh, uh, efficiencies and improvements in the processes. I'll take the first one from an audit compliance perspective. So traditionally speaking, uh, when you're performing audits, you tend to go for a sample of the data and say that, hey, I want to understand how often, for example, there are the controls are followed. For example, there's a certain process which requires approvals, and you want to see how often is that approval cycle or approval protocol followed accurately. Usually, traditionally, you would take a sample, you would go check if it has gone through each and every step of the process, and you say yes or no. When you're using process mining, the first thing you can eliminate is that you do not need a sample. If 1,000 transactions happened over the course of the period, you're able to see all those 1,000 transactions in real life. And you could see where exactly was the non-compliance identified, where was it that you can detect the anomaly. And you will have a clear instance. Okay, it's 3% of the cases, for example, did not follow the approval cycle. There you have right in front of you where the controls could be lagging. What are the reasons for that? So internal control weakness identification becomes suddenly uh, accurate because it's not based on samples, and also much quicker than what the manual traditional sampling process could have been. Additionally, one more uh, use case that I have seen in especially manufacturing industries is to identify why is there a delay in getting the finished product out to the customer. And using process mining, uh, this particular client was able to identify where the challenges are. So, for example, they found out that certain things within the QC procedure took longer than they expected. Upon diving into further details, it turned out that within the QC team, there is a lot of back and forth communication that happened, where teams are checking with each other whether certain compliances are met or not, whether certain quality checks are as per standard or not, and then it was moved forward. Now, the time that it was taking between the communication within different departments identifies a broader problem. What we noticed, what was identified was that the teams, there was a very, very frequent turnover within the team, which is why they did not have the adequate experience or the cumulative knowledge in order to understand what the right standards or what the right protocols were. This led to a very interesting finding that probably additional training was required, or probably there was a need to retain the employees more than they were within the organization.
So we know that process mining is one, you could say, tool that helps companies identify what are the process inefficiencies that are hampering their, you could say, ultimate results, which should be growth, and ultimately it's a financial impact. What have you found out to be the challenges that the companies face while implementing process mining, considering that it has become a very important tool. The companies, especially companies that have high impact on the consumers, I would say financial institutions who are the custodians of consumers' money. How is it? What are the challenges that stop them from implementing these process mining in the workplace?
So, to understand process mining, there are a few things that we must know. For a process mining to successfully work, you need certain data points which may or may not be available readily, depending on the nature of the organization. You mentioned financial institutions, so that's a very good industry to start with. Usually, banks specifically have very tight controls around the information and the data that they have. The good thing is that a lot of data in this day and age is automated, which means that it's stored somewhere in the systems. The three most important things that we require in order for a process mining project to be successful are: the firstly, there should be a unique identifier for every transaction, which I believe we always have. Next, you should have a timestamp indicating when a certain activity is happening. And third is, of course, the name or the description of the activity. Now, I'll give you an example. In banking, let's say you're trying to onboard a customer and you're going through a KYC process. You will have certain data points. Let's say the customer, you have the customer, the customer has filled out the details, and you have the initial information in the system. So that's your first timestamp. When did the customer do that? The second thing is uh, the evaluation of the KYC details. So probably there's a there's an officer involved within the bank who would start looking at that information. Number three, there would be certain controls that we are evaluating. And probably then there's some internal communication that happens. And then eventually the customer is onboarded or the KYC is completed. I may be out of order a little bit, but just to give you a very simple example here. When that happens, you get 5 different activities and 5 different timestamps, and you're able to see how much time it's taking for the customer to get onboarded. If every step has a timestamp, like I said, has a unique identifier, and has an activity which states that this is exactly what happened at this timestamp, then you have the full trail and you're able to convert it into a process mining project. The challenge comes when the data entry is not properly recorded or is not coming through a system. If there are manual touch points or manual timely activities mentioned or timestamps mentioned, then this could pose a big challenge to the process mining itself. In this day and age, I have noticed most of the organizations have some sort of activity, some sort of timestamps somewhere recorded. They do have timestamps. If there's an internal communication, usually they would have a chatter, or they would have a messenger, or they would have an email communication tool, which again stores your timestamps as well, which stores the activities as well. Once you have those, you can do process mining sufficiently easily. The second challenge is data-wise, you need to make sure that the quality of the data and the integrity of the data is rightfully maintained, which means that if you're using certain data today in order to perform process mining, you should have a continuous supply of similar data for future transactions in order to continue with the process mining monitoring. Because if that does not happen, then it will not be a like-to-like comparison going forward, and eventually the whole project would falter. However, I think while these challenges exist, they are fairly easy to overcome. The bigger challenges is to get the right tool for your organization. There are so many tools out there right now for process mining. There's Solanas, there's UiPath, there is Fluxicon. There's a whole lot of tools right now available. What tool does the company need? What fulfills their needs? Which tool is most affordable as well for the company? And that is what actually determines how you take the whole project forward. But in determining which tool you have, which is one of the challenges I say, the good part is process mining, unlike data analytics, is a very simple cost benefit analysis tool. If you feel and if you can come up with efficiencies which can reduce your, let's say, working capital, or in any way help you bring down certain costs and expenses, there's a direct profit cost analysis that you can perform, and you can see which tool you can go, how complex the tool can be depending on your requirements. If you can derive $100 million worth of savings through a process mining project, then yeah, you definitely can easily go for a tool that will fulfill all your needs. One more challenge that I often see is the fact that in organizations, the different systems do not talk to each other, which means when data is coming from disparate sources, you need to find the right solution. You need to find the right combination of how different data elements and different tools are talking to each other. That is what helps you create a successful, a fully integrated process mining model. It's not something impossible, but requires a conscious effort and requires some engineering support in order to make sure that the tools that we have within an organization, within a certain vertical, they talk to each other.
So in highly regulated organizations, how does process mining aid in identifying and mitigating the compliance risks?
Now, since we're talking about a highly regulated environment and the processes that can be monitored using process mining, one thing that comes to my mind is the transaction monitoring system, how that works. So you usually have all the data that you need in order to monitor the transactions, which is what will help you perform the process mining project. There is some level of pre-processing of the data and the aggregation required, but in reality, what is transaction monitoring? You can think about it, right? That it's a system. It applies some predefined rules to the transactional data. It will identify suspicious transactions, and you can use these rules based on certain regulatory requirements or internal policies and controls and historical patterns. So, like if you have rules which may flag transactions above a certain threshold, and transactions involve, let's say, certain high risk countries or certain unusual patterns, you know what those rule based filtering is. You know exactly what those identifiers are. Now that you have the data for transactions, you're able to find where those triggers are happening. Obviously, you would have your own system for alert generation and alert investigation. But within process mining, you can predefine those rules, and you can see, okay, so these are the transactions where suspicious uh, activities happening. These are the high risk countries that we need to evaluate. Or there's an unusual pattern based on the sequence of the transaction that you can look at in order to identify the anomaly. Once those things are identified, what process mining tools do is they will create some sort of a dashboard, some sort of an analysis where you can pinpoint to those activities where the unusual transaction happened. And you can look at a cluster of those transactions, and you can see if there is a particular trend which is common among them. Maybe there is, maybe there's not, but gives you an idea of what uh, kind of customers or what kind of transactions could be leading to those unusual situations. And once you have those identified, you can continue with your risk assessment and decision making. Process mining tools have some very uh, sophisticated analytical models as well within the process flow, which you are able to cast a magnifying glass on, just get into the weeds of the specific transactions and come out with specific uh, trends, how and why certain unusual activities are happening.
So I'll touch another aspect of this compliance and risks area. What are the privacy and security considerations that we need to, or the organizations, the businesses that implement process mining need to consider?
Yeah, and Sana, that's a great question, because that's something a lot of organizations currently struggle with. When we talk about process mining, we are literally looking at all sort of data information possible, and which could include certain PII uh, details as well. So we need to be very careful in how the data is being used within these tools, because at the end of the day, these are third-party tools. It depends where the data is being hosted. So those things need to be evaluated, whether it's a cloud-based tool, whether it's the data is being stored on a cloud for a SaaS platform, whether you have on-prem control of the data where the tool stores. So in tool selection, that is definitely one of the key considerations. One more thing that a lot of process mining uh, teams do is the anonymization of the data, or in some way tokenizing it, so that you use aliases instead of personal details and personal information. You do require a lot of data, which it would be beneficial from a process mining aspect to use more and more details, but obviously not at the cost of compromising on your data privacy policies and overall exposing your data to another tool. So, yeah, that's something which requires very careful consideration.
Okay, and what tools are generally recommended? You would say.
So there are quite a few tools out there, like I said, but if we go by what Gartner has analyzed in the last few years at their top, or the magic quadrant as they call it, it's the tool called Celonis, which has been a top tier tool, has had significant success in the last few years. and the technology has been constantly upgraded pretty frequently, if not more. There are a lot of benefits of using it in terms of good good display of the processes, better connectivity to other uh, systems like pre-built. They have, I think, pre-built connectors for SAP, for Oracle, and all the other ERPs that are usually available to an organization. They have a stellar dashboarding system, and they have something called an action flow where you can actually, when we talked about, for example, alert generation, it can send you an alert. Hey, we identified X number of transactions from certain high risk country, for example. So yeah, Solonis stands there at number one, but they are a cloud-based platform, so it's important to consider the data privacy restrictions as well and how comfortable the organizations are with using a SaaS tool. Other than that, you have UiPath, you have something called GB Tech, and there are quite a lot of tools at present available in the industry. But these are some of the top three that I can think of.
So, does the process mining tools technologies integrate with other technologies easily, like for robotic automation and business intelligence?
To some extent, yes. So, for example, some of the process mining tools they have a direct connector available, for example, for Power BI. So, if you have certain insights that you do not want to present in Solonis have their own dashboards. But if you want to present in Power BI, you can pull out that data and use it in Power BI. One other thing is the power of process mining is called the conformance testing, which means you are comparing the original happiest path that you thought of in your desktop procedure with the actual process, and you want to see where the gaps are. There are certain tools which you can use in order to perform that comparison. For example, there is another process mining tool called Signavio, which was acquired by SAP a few years back, and they have a very good comparison or conformance model where you can actually check. Similarly, GB Tech has an inbuilt process mapping as well as a process mining tool, and conformance testing could be performed within one tool itself.
So, what role does artificial intelligence and machine learning play in advancing process mining?
Yeah, the role of machine learning and AI, as we can see, is has become a very crucial part of almost any process nowadays. And process mining does not lag behind with AI and ML. What process mining is actually doing today, it is giving you the actual process the way it works. But the future of process mining is very closely related to AI and especially machine learning, because you want to be able to predict what the future of the process will look like. For example, if you were to reduce the number of resources working on a certain process, or you wanted to create certain bots which would bring in certain efficiencies, or you want to alter the way a process functions, maybe by eliminating a process in the middle, how will that impact the overall efficiency of the process, the functioning of the process? What machine learning can do, what predictive modeling can do for process mining is use your historical data, use your historical information, and be able to predict to certain accuracy what would happen to your process in the future, given there are no changes or given there are certain changes to the variable.
So, Farrukh, what are the typical misconceptions that the businesses have even today about process mining?
So, like I said, the concept is still not very well understood in a lot of organizations, but I think things are changing as there's a constant move towards efficiency, towards making processes faster, more efficient, leveraging robotics. What the companies still believe is that a process map is as good as a process mining chart or a process mining outcome, which is not true, because your your desktop process is not data driven, you don't know, number one, whether that is actually being followed to its core in real life or not. You don't know how much time it takes to move from process A to step A to step B within a process. And this is where the vision of an organization, the vision of a team comes in, where they are able to say, yeah, there are opportunities in order for us to make processes more efficient. If something is taking, let's say, 10 days, we can investigate why that happens and maybe bring that 10 days to fewer days. For example, I was just talking to somebody yesterday and I found out that a process was literally reduced from 10 days to 2 days, which is a huge difference in terms of the efficiency of that process, which means that there are gaps available out there, there are bottlenecks available out there that you don't even know of. And a lot of them could be just low hanging fruits which you could uh, analyze, which you could look into more details and come up with interesting solutions to make things more efficient.
Basically, adding to your point, businesses should learn from the previous examples that we have seen. Just like Nokia, it was a huge company. Once the CEO of the Nokia said that we do not know where we went wrong. So it's not just about taking immediate benefits from efficiencies by making use of these latest trends and technologies that we have. It's also about experiencing that learning curve that comes in the life of not just individuals but also businesses. What would you advise to those professionals who don't want to learn new things, or who are a bit reluctant in exploring the new trends in technology, who don't feel that they are tech savvy, neither they want to become tech savvy? What would be your words to those people?
That's an interesting question. I think the speed at which things are changing today, Sana, it's very different from the speed at which things used to change, let's say, maybe 2 or 3 decades ago. When I started off my career, Excel was already a thing, but I did hear about stories when accountants used to have those large books where journals used to be maintained by hand. And we all have heard about stories how technology took over and a lot of people became, or their skills became obsolete. Yeah, their intuition and their judgment definitely remains, but the fact that you're not able to continue with the technology definitely puts you in the back seat. I think it's a matter of individual preference of where they want to be in the next few years, where they want to see themselves. Going from where we are now with ChatGPT and OpenAI, things are changing even more quickly. I have noticed that technology has really come a long way, and learning and being at the forefront of technology helped me understand where I want to be. I mean, yes, there were a lot of options that I could be, but depending on the industry, the market, my interest, and where really I think I could combine both my prior experience in finance and my new expertise in data, where I could fit in. I think it's more of an individual judgment.
It's also good to try new things, and it's also good to experiment. As in professional, I would tell you from my experience that I've always tried new stuff. I mean, I've worked in finance, I've worked with operations, I've worked with HR, I've worked with all sort of the you could say areas or functions within an organization, and that has actually helped me. Um, I was fortunate. I've been fortunate enough, and I would say I'm privileged to have uh, you know, received chartered accountancy qualification, and we've talked about chartered accountancy a lot. so, but yeah, actually, it I think it also gives you it equips you with the skills to manage people as well, because we go through an extensive 3.5 years of articleship where we interact with people not just within our firm, which is generally an audit firm. We also interact with people in terms of clients. When we go to our corporate clients, we interact with people over there. We learn new things. We are always exploring new businesses, learning how they do it, and how different things work.
Yeah, there's one thing that I want to add here and talk just to conclude on process mining. So there are a lot of technologies and tools that will come and that will go, and there will always be something more efficient in a few years, which is probably better than process mining, better than any other data analytics tools that we have today. But it's important to understand that these tools are all means to an end. They are not the end goal itself. The end goal is to uh, be proficient in the underlying technology, is to be able to quickly learn and, like you said, unlearn and move on. Because like I said, a lot of tools have come and gone. So you do not get, and that's what I personally believe in, emotionally attached to a tool. Be attached to a technology, to an academic uh, perspective, to an academic finding. What's important is how much do you understand what goes on in the background, what goes on behind the scenes.
Yes, Farrukh, I think you're right. Staying relevant requires learning, adapting, and sometimes unlearning what you previously used to practice. Well, that absolutely flies by. Thank you very much for joining us today. Your insights on process mining were truly fascinating. I have a feeling that our viewers are going to be itching to dive deeper into this powerful tool. And to all of you out there, thank you for tuning in. Remember, whether you're in finance, operations, technology, or any other field for that matter, understanding your process is a key to efficiency and growth. So keep those wheels turning, keep those ideas flowing, and we'll see you next time. Until then, stay curious because knowledge is power. So process power.